Hello and welcome to Lesson 8, where we're going to be learning about a new data type, the character data type. So let's jump right into the lesson. What are some examples of a character? A character is a single letter out of a string. So an example of that would be just the single character B, or you can have the character 2, and you can also do things like symbols, so exclamation marks. And then there's also the characters that you don't see all the time. Something like an N with a tilde over it. So let's make our first character. The keyword for a character data type is char. And like every other data type, we put our variable name and we set it equal to a value. But whenever we set it equal to a value, we get an error. And it says cannot implicitly convert type string to char. That's because we use these double quotes, which means we're making a string literal. We need to replace these double quotes with single quotes like this. Using single quotes means that we created a character literal. And if we try to add another character into this, we'll get another error that says too many characters in character literal, since a character can only be one single letter like we have here. So the computer doesn't really distinguish between characters and integers. You can convert a character into an integer very easily. So let's do a console write line and I'll show you what I mean. We'll do our console write and we'll make a label for our character. And we'll just concatenate on my first char. And now let's make another label for an int. And what we're going to do here is convert our char into an int 32. So the way that we know how to do that is we use the convert class dot toInt32, and we're going to supply it my first char. And now let's run this and see what it prints out. We have our char, an n with a tilde over it, and then the int value of this char is 209. So that means that the computer thinks the integer 209 is the same exact thing as an n with a tilde over it. So let's do one more console write. So I'm going to put a label in here, 209 is the character, and I'll concatenate onto that, convert dot toChar, and we're going to give this method the value 209, the number that we want to convert into the character. So before we run this, what should happen is we should see the same thing we did before with char, with our character, and then an int, and then 209, and then under it we'll see 209 is the character, and this will convert it into the character in with a tilde. And we see that's what we get out. So the computer doesn't care if you start with a character or if you start with the integer, because for it, both are interchangeable values. So let's close this. So the number 209 is our character, right? But what are the other numbers? What characters could the numbers starting from 1 be? So let's make a for loop. Int x starting at 1, while x is less than or equal to 209, we're going to increase x by 1. And inside of this loop, we just do a console write line. And I'm going to do string concatenation a little different here. What this is actually called is string interpolation, but it's just an easier way of concatenating values. So what you do is you put a $sign and then your string, and now you type as normal. So I want to display the word count, but now I want to concatenate our x value into the string. So the way that you do it here is you use double squirrely brackets, and that breaks the string. And now you can put the variable here. So the variable x, and then here our string continues because we have our closing brace here of a colon. And here I want to convert the x value into a character. So we'll do our double braces again, use convert dot toChar, and we're going to give it the integer value x, which is our looping variable. And one question you might have about printing things out in this way is, what if I want my label to have a brace in it? And the answer is you just have to escape it with 2 braces. See how it turned purple? That means it's an escape character. So these 2 braces will only print a single brace in our string, but we don't want any braces, so I'm going to delete that. Let's run our program and find out what the characters are. And did you hear the bell? We actually caused that bell. and we're going to see what exactly does it in just a little bit. But looking at our output, we see that there are a lot of question marks, so that means the computer doesn't quite know how to display that character. Starting at 33, we start to see our special character, exclamation mark, our double quotes, more special characters. We have a 0, and ending our numbers is number 57, which is a 9. So this means that whenever we see the number 9 here, the computer sees the number 57. And that's just its representation of the number 9. And we see that we have our uppercase letters. Our uppercase letters actually appear first, and they start at the value 65 and go all the way down to value 90. Have some more special characters, and then we get our lowercase a at 97, and then the whole alphabet down to 122 Z. Scrolling on, we see that the computer still doesn't quite know how to display some of these characters. We have some currencies, and let's take a look at 209, and we see there is our character that we started with. So surely there must be something that documents all of these characters and the numbers that they represent, right? Well, you'd be correct, and that is called an Ascii table. So I'll bring up an Ascii chart, and I'll have the link to this in the description. Let's first take a look at the uppercase A. We see that it's at a decimal value. We're looking at the decimal column here. It's at the decimal value 65, which is what we saw in our program. And we see that the lowercase a is at a decimal value of 97. So these are lining up, as you can see. Now I'll put this to the side, and let's take a look back at the top and see what some of these starting at 1 are. So you can see why maybe the computer didn't know how to display some of these. Because number 1 is start of heading, and then 2 is start of text, which can't really be displayed to a user. You have an end of text, an end of transmission, then continuing down we see bell at number 7. So remember, we heard that bell whenever we first started this program, and that's actually caused by the number 7 being printed out as a character. 8 is a backspace, so that's a fun one to play with. We have our tabs, and then if we look at 10, I'll move that over so we can see the decimal column. If we look at 10, we see that it is the new line feed. And that's why we see that there's a space here, because this is actually the new line character being printed out. And when the character is printed, it creates this break in the text, this line break. And then after that, we continue on with the characters that we're more familiar with. But let's take another look at this table, and we see that it only goes to 127. Down here at the bottom, delete. But our character was number 209. And the reason that the Ascii table stops at 127 is because it was our first attempt at how to represent characters with numbers for the computer to associate them with. Once the entire world started using computers, we had to incorporate their symbols into the language of the computer as well. And that meant we had to expand on this list. And with that expansion, we created new standards of representing these characters. The most common one that we use is Unicode. So we have our list of Unicode characters. For the most part, they're the same as our Ascii table, but they keep going. And if we look on this chart, we see 209 is a Latin capital letter N with tilde. That's the end of the lesson. It was a bit of a short one, but now you know about the character data type, and you also learned how to do the string interpolation to print out labels and variables instead of having to rely on string concatenation and plus signs. Now let's move on to the task. For lesson 8, the task is make a for loop that starts at 97 and goes to 122, including the number 122. Convert the integer you use for the for loop into a character and print it. It will print a lowercase letter. Then print the same letter, but in uppercase in the same loop. So try that on your own, and when you come back, we can show my solution to it. And here's my solution. Leave a comment if you have any questions, or you can always get in touch with me on our Discord server. Links will be in the description. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next Tuesday.